Are there other countries that have approved RBGH? Apparently, the hormone was banned in Europe and Canada. Canada? That's strange because Health Canada usually models its decisions on the FDA's. RBGH, scandal at Health Canada. Monsanto accused of attempt to bribe Health Canada for RBGH.
Margaret Hayden, I swear that the evidence I shall give on this examination...
In October 1998, 3 scientists from Health Canada testified before a Senate commission in order to stop the approval of the transgenic hormone. The scandal was made public by whistleblower Dr. Shiv Chopra.
Shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God. My question to myself was, what truth am I going to tell? The one I know or what the minister is telling me to tell? And that was my conflict.
I would ask each one of you, have any one of you been lobbied by Monsanto? Any one of you?
No. Dr. Hayden?
I did attend a meeting back approximately about, I believe, 1989-90, and Monsanto representatives had met with myself and my supervisor, Dr. Drennan, and my director, Dr. Messier, and at that meeting, an offer of $1 to $2 million was made by the company, and I don't know any more about what became of that, but my director indicated after the meeting that he was going to report it to his superiors.
How did Monsanto react?
Well, Monsanto did not deny that they made the offer of $1 to $2 million at this meeting. They later on tried to say, oh, this was an offer of research in Canada to do some more studies in cows in Canada or whatever. So anyway, that's what happened in Canada. The drug was not approved. So the European Parliament, based on what revelations in Canada, banned it forever. And then all of a sudden, we 3, Margaret Hayden, Gerard Lambert, and I, were dismissed for disobedience. And
we fired.
All 3 of us were fired, and those fights are now in courts.
The United States Congress also opened an investigation at the request of RBGH opponents who oppose the ban on labeling milk as RBGH-free. Interestingly enough, the investigation was never completed.
Government purchases of milk surpluses. Bovine growth hormone, BGH, is a test of consumer acceptance of genetic engineering.
In the garbage. In the garbage!
The cow hormone drug was simply the first major application of biotechnology to food production, and Monsanto is a very powerful corporation with many linkages to top-level persons in government. I think the prevailing ethic at the federal government was biotechnology is so important that we can't let a few little questions about cow safety or human safety get in the way.
The reason the FDA approved it is it appeared to be that there was a lot of people that used to work had key positions that had worked for Monsanto, came over to the FDA and managed to get the FDA to approve it.
It's revolving doors that move up. It's kind of like a double helix, a spiral.
Revolving door?
Yes, revolving door.
The revolving door is not just in agriculture. It tends to be in many areas.
Donald Rumsfeld was the CEO of Searle, which was a Monsanto subsidiary. The former U.S. Trade Ambassador, Mickey Cantor, ended up on Monsanto's board. Supreme Court Judge Clarence Thomas used to work for Monsanto.
Monsanto revolving doors. The state of affairs in 1999 includes Linda Fisher moves from the Environmental Protection Agency to Monsanto, Michael Friedman from the FDA to Monsanto, Marcia Hale and Josh King from the White House to Monsanto, Margaret Miller from Monsanto to the FDA, William Ruckelshaus from the EPA to Monsanto, and let's not forget Michael Taylor, who went back and forth several times.
Once your mission carried out by the FDA, you became Monsanto's vice president for public policy.
Right.
So there is no conflict of interest for you.
No, and again, the rules are the rules, and I played within the rules. I think in terms of public acceptance, it's been one blunder after another. If you're trying to have a strategy for having the public understand and accept the new technology, having the first application of it be related to milk, which we already have more than we need, it created, it helped create a climate of
suspicion.
I think the idea that companies are not required in every case of a GMO to submit the product to FDA, such as is required in Europe, I think that from a public confidence, public acceptance standpoint, that's not a sufficient system. I personally have said that Congress should change the law. Congress should create a mandatory notification system that ensures that every product is looked at by FDA and that FDA makes a safety judgment about every product.
That's some very compelling testimony. It seems that Michael Taylor has qualms about the policy he signed in 1992. What about the FDA's own scientists? Was there a consensus on the GMO regulations? FDA documents show they ignored GMO safety warnings from their own scientists, written by Steve Drucker. Lawyer Stephen Drucker represents a coalition of nonprofit associations. He sued the FDA, forcing it to declassify its internal files on GMOs.
We received over 44,000 pages from the FDA's own files, and they revealed that the FDA has been lying to the world since 1992, if not before. But they continue to lie. They are still lying. They claim that there's an overwhelming consensus in the scientific community that genetically engineered foods are as safe as their conventionally produced counterparts. And they claim that there has been sufficient data to back up this consensus. Both of those claims are blatant lies. There are several examples. For instance, Dr. Louis Priebel of the FDA's microbiology group wrote, quote, "There's a profound difference between the types of unexpected effects from traditional breeding and genetic engineering," unquote. Then Dr. Priebel added in his memo that some of the aspects of genetic engineering may be more hazardous. The concern expressed by the FDA's various scientific experts was so clear and unmistakable that the FDA official whose job it was to track and summarize the scientist's input, Dr. Linda Call, wrote a memo to the FDA biotechnology coordinator, Dr. James Mariansky.
According to the internal FDA's files, which have been declassified now, there were many in-house critics, among the scientists of the FDA, about the proposed policy. I have, for instance, a memorandum sent to you by Linda Call.
Right. She stated, "The processes of genetic engineering and traditional breeding are different.
Traditional breeding are different, and according to the technical experts in the agency,
they lead to different risks."
Different risks.
The point was that we had many people with many different views. Linda Call, of course, wrote that in her memo, but in fact, when we finished the policy, all the scientists agreed with the policy. Now, FDA, of course, looked at the use of genetic engineering and has no information that simply the use of the techniques creates products that differ in safety or quality.
Even before the consistent warnings in the memos from the FDA's own scientists, the FDA had very clear warning because the very first genetically engineered food supplement that came to market in the United States caused a major epidemic.
Do you remember what happened in 1989 with L-tryptophan? You remember?
Yes.
It was a bioengineered amino acid. We know very well what's amino acid and...
Right.
That killed dozens of people and made hundreds and hundreds sick.
it caused an epidemic of an unusual disease called EMS.
Right.
And how many people died?
Right, but we have many...
37, and more than 1,000 people